Morning, this is Alan from Baja Overlanding, and we just got back from a trip and I was noticing the sway bars were not disconnecting. The light kept flashing and it would never set. And so finally we had to disconnect one of the sway bar links so I could get home because it was lifting the front wheel so badly. So now we're home, we're going to have a look at it, we'll go out, test it, see if there's problem, and then if we have to, we'll pull the sway bar and pull it apart and have a look at it. So let's go have a look at the Jeep and see what is going on. So we're going to try and disconnect our sway bar and see what happens. We are in four-wheel low, as we can see up here, and the sway bar is not disconnecting. So I think we're going to have to pull it off and see what's going on. Let's see. Okay, so really simple disconnecting the plug. Little button right here you push and you can pull this lever all the way down. Once it's down, you have to just wiggle the unit and the plug comes off. We found inside. This is my electronic sway bar disconnected. You can see everything's gummed up and rusted. The actuator motor is all corroded. The little slide out gear lock is rusted up. I had to beat that out with a hammer, the spring and the secondary gears. So we're going to clean this up and get it working again. I guess that's not a big deal when these do this. So we'll get it all cleaned up, show you what we do when we clean it up, and then we'll put it back together and make sure it works. But not sure I'm going to use it. We're looking at something else and we'll see how that turns out. So let's get it done and see what we end up with. Hey, morning. So we're going to start trying to clean these pieces up. As we saw, everything is very rusty and nothing was moving inside the mechanism. So we're going to clean them up and see if we can get it all back together. Not going to clean up very good. All the pieces are pretty well pitted. But I've watched a bunch of videos and it doesn't seem to affect the operation. So we will see how it goes. We want to make sure there's no rust in the gears, because that's the part it slides back and forth on, and you don't want that catching on anything. So we're going to clean everything up. It looks like it's coming up pretty good. The rust is just a surface rust, so that doesn't seem to be affecting it. There's only a couple of pieces in here that move, and you've got the spring that pushes the mechanism back and a little claw on this that slides it back and forth. So it's a pretty simple system. So that looks like it's pretty good. So it's going to slide in and out of here, and we need to make sure that is cleaned up good. And it's going to let it slide. So this pin, when it is pushed back, tells the system that the locker is free. And as the locker engages, it pushes out and tells it it's locked. So that's your indicator pin. And then this is your ram that pushes out and moves the gear across. So they all need to be cleaned up, make sure they're going to move properly. So we have this cleaned up. We might have to spend a bit more time on some of the gears. This is where the water's getting in. These seals don't seem to work. The gasket was in good condition. There's a seal on each side, and I think that's where the water gets in. So I'm not quite sure how you would fix that. but we'll have a look. Okay, so everything's cleaned up. We've cleaned around the gasket surface. The gasket that was on it came out in good shape, so we're going to reuse it, and we'll start assembling it. In behind the gears was a little tricky. The grease sits in there and it didn't want to break down too well, but we got it all cleaned out. A little bit more I've got to clean out on this one, but again, all cleaned up. There's no rust on the teeth, so it all looks pretty good. So I think we'll be able to get it back together. Everything moves, it'll work good. So we got everything cleaned up. I'm just going to finish up a couple of little pieces, and then we will grease it all and reassemble it, and we'll film that. So the actuator motor does not have a gasket. It has like a little rubber surface here. So I'm going to put a little bit of sealant on there because water can get in and flow through into the gears. So we're going to seal that up as well, make sure we're not getting any water into this system. So it only goes one way. Not sure that was to torque spec, but it's going to work. So this will slide in here. The teeth are chamfered on the side it pushes with, so they grab. They either were chamfered from the factory or they've worn that way. So make sure you check out the chamfer on the teeth. And it's going to push towards the smaller gear. So it sits back on the large gear, which is this one, and pushes over and locks on the smaller gear. Okay, so we've been looking at this because the gear has chamfered teeth on one side, and that's the side that's going to slide in. So the way this works is when it's in a unlocked position, the gear is completely onto the larger gear on this side. And as it slides forward, then it selects and unselects off the smaller gear here. And then the spring is to just help it push it back into the locked position when the pressure is taken off the actuator motor. So the actuator motor is pushing against the spring, lifting the gear up, unlocks it, and then the lever can work. When the actuator motor comes back down, the spring pushes this back in, locks the gear. So that's why it'll take a few movements to lock back in. And you should have the vehicle steady and on a level surface to unlock it, because the motor is trying to push that gear and it will not push it with any load forced against the gears. But when it returns, the first time it lines up, it'll drop back into place. So we're just using a light lithium waterproof grease, just a white grease, which is what they had in here to start with. So we're going to grease everything up, make sure it all moves freely, put some more silicone on our gasket, and reassemble it. So hopefully this is going to protect our waterways. So we have our gear in position, our springs on, mechanism is set. We're going to take the secondary half, and we need, when it goes on, we need to make sure our sway bars are in the same location, although we can unlock it. move them. There we go. Sway bars are in the same location, and tighten that up and we're all good to go. Put the sway bar to the plug, and we've put the car in four-wheel low. We actually turned the engine off and it still works. Just turn the ignition on, and so we've hit the sway bar disconnect button and it works. Let me show you. This is the sway bar arm, and as you can see, I'm moving this one and the other one is not moving. So the sway bar disconnect works, and we will go reconnect it and give it a try. So as I said, once you hit the button, there you go, you just move the sway bar a little, the gears mesh, and we're moving both arms. So after rebuilding that sway bar and testing it, we thought about it a bit and decided we're not interested in a sway bar that we have to connect and reconnect, and we went to Antirock, and after installing it, I'm pretty sure it's the only way to go. The Antirock is a very easy install. There's 4 bolts in here, 2 on each side, bolts the mount up. You slide the bar through, put the arms on the end, connect the included links, set them to the right height, and you're ready to go. I have just as much control as I had before on the road. I do have Falcon shocks, and I can set them at the higher number to make the ride a little more firmer. So between that and the Antirock, my on-road is excellent. And then when I put the shocks to soft and the Antirock off-road, I have amazing flexibility. So I think that was a better choice. So you can either rebuild your bad sway bar or swap it out. Since I am using the mechanical sway bar, I will not be having this lead plugged into anything that went to the sway bar. So I've placed it in a plastic bag and duct tape the crap out of it, and it's going to get tied up under here out of the way. The last thing you want is that switch to get water in there and corrode, and it will definitely give you a problem. So make sure you take care of that. Okay, so we went through, we rebuilt the electronic sway bar, then decided not to use it and installed an Antirock. We're really happy with the Antirock, but the problem is you get a flashing sway bar light. And I checked out a bunch of different options, and the only thing I found that will turn it off is the JScan app that works with an OBD reader. So we purchased that, got a new reader, and went through the app and set it up. The setup is pretty easy. I'll show you in a sec what I went through the steps. Okay, once you have the app installed and up and running, you have to register it for the vehicle, so it's only good for this one car. But you go to the adaptation tab on the top, and you select the modular chassis network add. You tap that and you scroll down to ASBS sway bar on off. Tap that. It's active at the moment. Oops. Deactivate, and you go, and it's saved the setting. Okay, and back out, and your sway bar is off. It tells the system it's disconnected, it doesn't work, and no more flashing light. Well, the JScan app worked perfectly. We turned off the sway bar, it shuts the light off, that's working great. While I was in there, I actually turned all my doors onto a single click to unlock them, turned off my seatbelt buzzer because that annoys the crap out of me if I'm trying to film with the seatbelt off for a second, and just checked a bunch of other settings, run through, and I've got a smog leak that it's telling me about. It reads all the codes, so very impressed with the whole thing. So hopefully you enjoyed me rebuilding the sway bar. I hopefully showed people a few little things. It wasn't a hard job, and we'll look for something else to fix and film. If you enjoyed this, maybe just click on the subscribe button so it builds my viewership. I would appreciate that. And watch out for some trip videos I got coming, and we'll just keep doing what we do. Thanks a lot.